Next would be your long-term financial instrument. Okay, we have two broad topics here. We have the debt-based and the equity-based. Let's start with debt-based. Debt-based is when an entity tries to borrow money for long-term funding or long-term projects. For example, a company is planning to expand their operation. Let's say nag-ooperate yung company sa Binyan. However, they would want to have an additional operation in Santa Rosa, Calamba, Cabuyao. Then therefore, you will be needing money. But sometimes the capitalization of the company is very small or just enough for the operations or the previous operations. So if they expand, they would need an additional capitalization or additional money so that they can put up the new business. So if you're talking about debt-based financial instrument, we can be talking about bank loans, long-term bank loans. This can be take form of notes payable, okay? But the best example in debt-based would be your bonds payable. Okay, na I think nadaanan nyo na ito sa financial accounting nyo. And bonds payable, these are indebtedness of entities. Okay, these are borrowed money from individuals or other companies as well. Okay, usually yung kapag nag-issue ng bond ang isang company, this is payable within 2, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Depende kung gaano kahaba yung project or gaano kalawak yung expansion ng project. Okay? So, mas malaki yung expansion, then therefore, mas matagal nila kakailanganin. This pays out at least 3% to 6% per annum. So, therefore, this is a guaranteed return or guaranteed expenses in the perspective of the entity. So kung ikaw naman yung nagpautang, so you give money in exchange of the bonds, you will be earning interest every year. Okay? Now, when we talk about equity-based financial instrument, these are your common shares. Okay? Equity-based. However, this has no guaranteed return or guaranteed expenses in the perspective of the company. Sa perspective ng company, they would need additional capitalization, meaning they would need additional cash. Cash influx can be in form of equity. Persons like you and me invest in a company, give our money in exchange of certificate of stocks, meaning we are going to be a part owner of a company. So if the company did not do well managing the money that we have brought in, then there would be no return for us. We shoulder the risk and the probability of not having a return on the money we put in may be at risk. Okay. However, if the company succeeds on their project, let's say they promise, okay, when you invest with us, there would be a probable 300% return on your investment. So kapag if you invested 1 million in shares of capital, possibly after 5 years maging 3 million siya. That's 300%. However, that is not a guarantee. That would only happen if the company succeeds. So therefore, if you are looking at equity-based financial instrument in the perspective of the debtor, or in the perspective of the investor, you bear the risk. You can earn from it or you cannot. Okay? However, pagdating sa debt-based, you are guaranteed a percentage. Guaranteed, let's say 3% per annum. So if you invested 1 million, that's 30,000 per year. Ano yan? Babayad sa'yo yan. Okay? Malugi man or kumita yung company, the company will have an expense of 30,000. In your part or in the part of the investor or the one who bought the bonds, after 1 year, nalugi yung company, they will be receiving 3% or 6% depending on the agreement. Okay. Again, guys, I'm going to say this. When we talk about financial instrument, these are intangible assets. Okay? We don't have really bonds that you can hold on to. It's just a piece of paper. The substance of which is the face value or the amount of indebtedness or the amount of equity that you have purchased. Okay? Now, if, okay, let's say, pagdating sa indebtedness, what if, okay, what if the company who borrowed money, okay, example of debt base is bonds. The bonds are questionable to be paid. Ibig sabihin, yung utang, possible hindi mabayaran. What happens to the value of the bonds? The value of the bonds may deteriorate. Now guys, if you're going to look at bonds differently, it's not just about individuals buying bonds from the company. Okay? Other companies can buy bonds of a certain issuer. So for example, sa SM nag-issue ng bonds, pwedeng bumili si, let's say, pwedeng bumili si Robinson ng bonds nila. Pwede yun. So, the initial measurement usually is the face value. Okay, I bought bonds of 1 million, so therefore after the agreement of 3 years, I will be paid 3 million and every year I will be paid of the interest. Tama? However, is it possible that bonds cannot be paid? Possible yan. If the company files for bankruptcy, for example, right now, di ba, nagka-COVID, airlines now do not have operation. Their only operation is cargo. So, gaano kalaki ang nawawala sa airline industry for every day na naka-lockdown ng isang country? Okay? So, possible, walang income. So, therefore, how can they generate funds to pay out the bonds that they have issued? So, possible, hindi mabayaran. So, with that, paano mangyayari doon? Possible ba malugi sa bonds? Yes, there's a probability. Pero hindi ganun kalaki. Kasi, for example, itong COVID kasi, this is a extraordinary event. This is not normal na lagi may virus. Tama ba? However, it can still happen. Okay? Now, in addition, bonds are not just being issued by private or publicly traded companies. Okay? Government can also engage in bonds or issuing bonds. So, bakit kailangan ng government ng additional capitalization or additional na pera? Okay. For a fact, for example, today, we have several projects ongoing. Okay, we have road widening, bridges being built, trains being facilitated, being planned, extensions of skyway, and so on and so forth. However, because of the COVID pandemic, some of the funds were put into the COVID pandemic or to address the pandemic. Okay, so therefore, some of the projects may have to be held if there's no additional capitalization or no additional cash to sustain the operation. That's why possible mangutang ang government. Now, highly probable ba na mabayaran if it is government issued? Yes. It's because it's the government. The only way na hindi mabayaran yung bonds of the government if there would be a war or the government is overthrown. So, ibig sabihin, wala nang control on the country or the economy. However, regardless, bonds are kind of low risk in the perspective of the investor. And this would be additional source of fund in the perspective of the entity. Okay? So, funding. We are talking about funding. Now, to understand financial instrument, you have to be very careful of the perspective you are in. Whether is it in the perspective of the entity or the perspective of the investor. In the perspective of the entity, when you engage on financial instrument, okay, regardless whether it is short-term or long-term, you will incur cost. If debt-based, you will incur interest expenses. If equity-based, you will incur what? Incur um, dividends. That is the cost of the equity. Okay? Same with the short term. Again, interest. However, if you are in the perspective of the investor, we are talking about income, interest income, okay? Dividend income if it is equity-based. Okay?